You know, as I said, I would not be surprised if Iran retaliated within 24, 48 hours. So far, that has not happened. And I think we can at least be a bit relieved about that. However, that does not mean that they won't strike back, because there is every possibility that they are now weighing up their options, seeing what they can do, how they can, well, strike back um, against the US, really teach Donald Trump a lesson. And in particular, there is a big thing in sort of the Middle East. Honor is still seen as like this really big thing in America. It's well, not in America, but in Iran especially. It's very cultural. So Iran definitely views this, and certainly many of the hardliners in Iran very much do view this as, we will strike back, but we are going to probably strike back at a moment of our choosing. That is how, at the moment, it certainly seems to be coming across. And I must stress, at this moment, who knows? Maybe something happens before this video, gets released. I don't know. But the big question is of course, how, where, and when would they strike back? And that is, I think, the big question on everyone's minds, how that would happen. But we have to remember that right now, in particular, Iran's options to strike back are very, very limited. Very limited indeed. However, they do have one option, and we'll get to it. I think they might pursue this option. However, if they do pursue that option, it will be very damaging to themselves as well. And it will have repercussions in that region as well. So we'll see if they go through with it. But it will certainly hurt the US very, very much so. So before we do get into this and having a look at the map, of course, like I say, please do remember to click the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the YouTube membership button down below as well. So thank you much to everyone who does help and support the channel that way. So over we go to our map. As always, there we go. A little bit better, a little bit bigger. As you can see, here's the region. So first things first, Iran, known for using proxies. And I think it's best to go over all these different proxies at the moment. So where are, of course, these proxies? Well, of course, we've got the Houthis here in Yemen. We'll just color them roughly where they are. So they're there in Yemen. You had Hezbollah in Lebanon, Syria at one point potentially as well. There are again similar forces over in Iraq potentially as well, and of course there was Hamas over here. Hang on, hang on. There we go, roughly there somewhere. So let's go over these forces, because I think it's worth reminding what happened. Let's first of all start off with Hamas. Hamas at this moment has zero chance of striking back on Iran's behalf. It has been pretty much obliterated at this point by Israel in the Gaza Strip, and they are pretty much determined to root them all out by root and stem, and that is having drastic consequences on the people who live there, aka the Palestinians in this case. But there is zero chance of a strike back from them. Then, of course, we go to Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they ain't striking back either, because the Israelis, as we remember, went in and pretty much decimated their missile stock. They had like over, I think it was something like 1,000 different missiles pointed at Israel. The Israeli IDF went in there, pretty much destroyed it all. Same thing for Syria. Now the Syrian civil war seems to be sort of be coming to an end, that there is pretty much a consensus in Syria pretty much forming of we do not want to fight anymore. We have had 10 years of civil war. We are tired of this. We want a new consensus. We want to go into a new age of peace. And it seems that the Hezbollah that were there also, of course, chased out by the IDF when the Assad regime fell. Now, that now leaves the only two, proxies of Iraq, of Iran, shall we say, in, of course, Iraq and Yemen. So you have the remainder now of the Iraqi insurgency, of course, funded by Iran. They have said that they are going to strike US bases in Iraq. Would not surprise me if that became the case here. They certainly seem to be the only group really that could strike back at the US on Iran's behalf. They have already said that they have vowed to make these bases a turkey shoot, as they have said it. So we'll see what happens if there is if bases in Iraq do get attacked. The other one, of course, then are the Houthis in Yemen. Back in May, the Houthis signed an accord with the US, and so far there has been no targeting of ships, but they have said and said in the past, if you strike Iran, we will start targeting US ships. Now, will they? Won't they? So far, nothing yet. Very quiet, shall we say, on that front. However, remember, the Houthis also got pretty messed up by the US Air Force when they struck back at these places. So at the moment, really, the only group that could strike back, and if I do think we do see a proxy strike back at the US for Iran, it will come from Iraq. I think that is the only viable group left that has anything to throw at the US in this case. Now, what is the big one? Because I said this I think could be the one that they do. If they do anything, but this will also have big consequences. Well, it's when they will close the Gulf of Aden. And that is, of course, hang on, we'll just reduce the size of the brush there, change the color to there. But essentially, they will just do that. Hopefully you can see it, but I think you get the point. That there, hang on, tell you what, I'll just do a little ring around it so you can see what I mean. That there is very, very easy for Iran to close. In fact, that entire strait there would be very easy for them to close. They could mine it. They could use short-range missiles. They could use drones. They could pretty much close off that strait. And this would be devastating, absolutely devastating to basically the energy exporting. 20% of like all oil goes through that strait. Not only that, but there is again substantial gas going through there as well. I couldn't find the number of gas that goes through the strait, but if 20% of the world's oil goes through that strait, you can probably guarantee probably maybe close-ish, might be smaller amount, probably also goes through that strait as well. Now, of course, what would happen? Well, this immediately would have a huge inflationary effect on energy prices, particularly oil around the world. That would immediately hurt America. Very, very much so. However, this would hurt Iran. And would Iran be able to take the economic pain? Because they would be pretty much sealing off one of their big sources of income for the country. Would they do that? We don't know. We generally do not know. A lot of hardliners have been calling for this, and that this is what they want Iran to do. Will they do it? We wait and see to see what happens in this, but they could very easily close that straight off if they wanted. But there would be other consequences to happen on this as well, because you've got places like Oman, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, even Iraq. They all use that strait as well to transport their oil out as well. So immediately, that would be Iran pulling in all those other countries potentially into this conflict as well, in some way, shape, or form, or at least hoping those other countries would also put pressure onto the US. What type of pressure, we don't know, but certainly some way to try and end the war. But that is the state of play as it goes at the moment. We do not know if Iran will respond. Maybe it could respond within a year. Maybe it could respond within 2. We just don't know. But what we do know is that Iran in the past has very, very much so, in some cases, decided we will hold off, but we will strike on a moment of our choosing when we decide to do it. As has been said before by the Iranian foreign minister, that strike will have far-reaching consequences, and they still don't know whether they actually destroyed all of the Iranian centrifuges. They still don't know the damage. But one thing interesting you will notice is that Iran has been becoming very, very buddy with Russia. Very much so. You'll see the Iranian ambassador going and visiting Russia. What if Iran decides, well, tell you what, how about we pursue our nuclear research in Russia? What if they decide we're going to build our bombs in Russia? I mean, again, go back to the map. You know, they've got access to Russia through the sea here. That they could do it. They could potentially do it. I mean, that's where they're transporting their weapons through at the moment. So it's increasingly becoming very, very clear. There seems to be at least a desperate notion of like they want to come together. Of course, Russia is doing this desperately in their interest because they want those weapons to use in Ukraine. But if Iran's now using them to fire at Israel, that means they can't really be given to Russia to fire in Ukraine, which again is the bizarre. I say bizarre, but silver lining in all this. But yeah, I mean, they could turn around and maybe even do that. What's to stop them going, hey, Putin, you've got a lot of nukes. Can we buy some from you? I mean, why not? We enter uncharted territory here. Very, very much so uncharted territory where we've had the US basically break all international rules, all international norms. Why should Iran follow those rules and norms as well when America basically starts breaking them? Why should it? So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.